We know historically in just that one area that there's 40 million tons grading about 0.4%. But there's been very little work done on sort of three quarters of the project.
Joining us for a conversation is Dan Weir, the CEO of Copper Bullet Mines. Mr. Weir, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Maurice.
Glad to have you on the program to share the opportunity before us in Copper Bullet Mines. Before we delve into company specifics, Mr. Weir, please introduce Copper Bullet Mines and the opportunity the company presents to shareholders.
So Copper Bullet Mines is a new company that we set up. It's a private company. We have a plan to take it public in the next 12 months. It's run by a bunch of experienced mining guys. We have currently 3 geologists involved in the company. We have multiple engineers, mining engineers, metallurgical engineers, process engineers, guys that really know how to mine. We have decided to focus on the United States for now, the Western United States. Many of you may know me that I've spent the last 5 years working in Africa, and it will be very nice to focus on copper and also focus on the United States. So I think we'll get into a lot more detail here as we move forward, right, Maurice?
Absolutely. You know, this may very well be the golden age for copper, as many believe that copper is the new oil. Mr. Weir, please provide us with an overview of the supply and demand of copper.
Yeah, so it's very interesting. You know, you've got Goldman Sachs and a number of companies have come out. Goldman Sachs uses the term copper is the new oil. You know, if you look at a comparison, you know, a combustible gasoline or diesel burning vehicle has about 48 pounds of copper in it. But a Tesla or an electric vehicle has 183 pounds of copper in it. So you can see here that it can be 4-5 times as much copper in an electric vehicle. So that's just one aspect of it, let alone the fact that we have to go across all around the world building stations to recharge our electric vehicles. And our houses are all wired with copper wiring through our houses. Where more and more people are putting solar panels on our house. That means more wires, more copper is needed for that. Again, I look at Africa, and there's only about 40 or 50% of Africa actually has electricity to people's houses. That's being built out as we move along. So, you know, other people call this is the golden age for copper, and I agree 100%.
Yeah, the value proposition of copper is quite compelling. Now, it's early days for Copper Bullet Mines as the company is currently private looking to go public. How does Copper Bullet Mines plan to meet the global demand for copper?
So we want to focus on, as we said, on North America, specifically Arizona, Nevada areas. You'll see some of our slides as we move forward. We are in what we call the Copper Triangle, which is in Arizona. We plan to focus on that area. We bought our first project, and we're going to detail that a little bit here in a minute. Just a month ago. It took me about 6 months to put it all together. And that first project has historical resources, but we're also looking for other assets. We are currently right now bidding on some producing assets. I can't get into any details on those right now because we're under a confidentiality agreement. But we are looking for those type of assets, near-term type producing assets or something that has historical resources that we can bring up to a new resource by twinning holes. So our focus and what we really would want to do is buy producing assets.
Let's go on site and find out more. Sir, take us to the Copper Triangle of Arizona and get us acquainted with the Copper Springs project along with some of your neighbors.
Great. So if you look at the slide here that we show the copper triangle, about 1 hour east of Phoenix. So it's very easy to land at the Phoenix airport and drive 1 hour from there. There's this area. In this copper triangle, you have companies like Rio Tinto, BHP, KGHM, Capstone, and Asarco, which is owned by Grupo Mexico. So and Freeport Mcmoran. So you now have some of the largest mining companies in the world with mines in this area or are building a mine. And what I mean by building a mine, Rio Tinto and BHP, if you can see on the slide here, are building the Resolution mine. They're spending billions and billions of dollars building this mine. It will be one of the largest copper mines in North America when it's built. And you can see from the map here, we're less than 12 kilometers away from that. Just to the north of us is Freeport Mcmoran. It has a copper smelter sitting here. There are only currently three large copper smelters in the United States and one smaller one. And you know what? Two of them just happen to be in the copper triangle. One, Freeport, just north of us, and the other one right at the bottom of the triangle, owned by Asarco, and it's called the Hayden smelter. That smelter is being shut down. So now you're looking at, in the United States, we're only going to have two full-size copper smelters, one here, one up at Bingham Canyon in Utah, and then a small one in the Texas area. So again, this is known for copper. Copper is produced from this area. It's probably the premier place in all of North America where you're seeing copper production. And guess what? We're basically the heart of this. Right there, right where your heart would be on your chest, Maurice. That's where we're situated.
All right. The Copper Springs is a shallow enrichment mineralization project with a historical resource, which is a non-compliant currently to 43101 standards. Provide us with some context and what is the plan moving forward to become 43101 compliant?
Yes. So amazingly, over the last 50 to 60 years, there's been a number of different groups who have owned this project or optioned this project and have gone in and drilled and calculated resources on here. Companies like Kerr-McGee, Humble, American Copper, and most recently in around 2010, there was a small junior company called Toro Resources had the project. And I must add to that, they had parts of the project. It wasn't until I was able to come in here and put all of the claims together in this area. There was three groups that I had to work with. One of the groups had the claims. They have a package of 8 claims that sit right in the middle of the claim block, and they have owned these claims since 1924. Their grandfather had, great-grandfather actually had staked them, owned them in the family all that time, and this is the first time since the 50s that this project has all been put together with all this claim package under one option. So, I'm not trying to pat myself in the back too much, but it was a lot of work, and it's been a great experience putting this whole package together. So now we have a claim package of 126 claims. Over 2,600 acres here. So a beautiful package that has had work done it over the years by some very large companies. In fact, Anglo America recently visited the project in the last number of years, and they say that this thing has huge potential, that you could be looking at here just like some of the others in the copper area, like Pinto Valley, where they had upwards of 1.5 billion tons of copper. I'm not saying that that's what we're going to get. I believe from the data that we've looked at that we have a historical resource now of 40 million tons grading around the 0.4 range. I've read a number of reports. Again, I can't guarantee this, that there is potential here to be sort of the 100 to 200 million tons, grading somewhere around that 0.4%. Again, that's what many of the mines in the area are mining at, is sort of 0.3, 0.4%. So I'm very excited about this. Like, put that in perspective. Even if we just have 40 million tons and we go back and twin a number of these holes, 40 million tons grading 0.4% is about 320 million pounds of copper. Maurice, what's copper trading at these days?
It's above $4. It's at near an all-time high.
Exactly. So we recently went up to sort of the 460, 470 range. It's pulled back in a little bit, but let's use $4. Okay, Maurice, it's currently trading, I think, today at 425. Let's call it $4. Multiply $4 times 320 million pounds of copper. You're somewhere around 1.2 to 1.3 billion dollars worth of copper sitting on this property right now. Now, again, there's a lot of work to do. We'll have to figure out recovery rates. We'll have to figure out all sorts of things that go along with that. But I'm just throwing some big numbers out here because it does have some historical resources on here, and we believe that those historical resources are good. Again, until I do the drilling on here and twin a bunch of these holes and bring it up to 43101 standards, I have to be very careful what I say.
Sticking with the historical resource here, please walk us through some of the historical drill locations. Yeah, so
as I mentioned, there was a number of different groups that have drilled over time, including Kerr-McGee, Phelps Dodge. A number of different groups have kind of come in and out of this project. Some people will say and look at a project and go, wow, but these guys drilled and they didn't find anything. Well, they did find a lot. You talk to certain geologists or people that have been around the mining industry for a long time, and they'll sort of tell you that a mining project, to put it into production, you've probably had about 5 or 6 junior companies, maybe a couple larger companies that have done all the resource studies and looked at it so many different ways. And then you're likely going to have 1 or 2 guys before it actually goes into production. So it's very typical of these type of projects that you have multiple different people over time that will pick up claims. They'll do some drilling. Maybe they ran out of money. Maybe the copper price dropped, all sorts of things. But I can tell you that in this area, as I mentioned, I'm the first one since the 1950s that's been able to put this whole package together. And we have a lot of the old data that we can go and model, go back and drill and build a resource on the back of that.
What can you tell us about the genetic and the exploration model?
So another great thing is around 2011, there was a number of people that actually went out and mapped this. We have talked to the geologists, and some of them are PhD type geologists who have gone out and done a lot of mapping on this project. Most of the work has been done in one area, most of the drilling and most of the work. There's a massive area sort of on the east side of the deposit that has huge potential. And these guys have gone out and done a bunch of the mapping and again agree that there's massive potential. And nobody's really drilled many holes in that area. So we do. This is how I come up with say, yeah, okay, we know historically in just that one area that there's 40 million tons grading about 0.4%. But there's been very little work done on sort of three quarters of the project. So we know that there is huge potential all across this thing. So I get very excited about that. I do believe that, and again, I can't guarantee this, I do believe that we can get to much higher numbers than 40 million tons.
To coincide with mapping, I see that a geophysics study was completed in 2007. Now, will this suffice for drill targeting, or is the plan to conduct another survey, or do you plan to twin the historic holes?
Yeah, so we will twin some of the holes. We will do a lot more geophysics over the property. You can see from some of the maps here, it was only done in the one area where they did most of the drilling. We do want to go back in here and want to do a lot more geophysics over that. Geophysics is a cheap way to do exploration. Remember that drilling is very expensive, so anything that you can do to pinpoint where you want to put those drills helps the geologist pinpoint exactly where we want to put the drill in the ground.
Let's discuss some important topics germane to your project. Are you fully permitted?
So, no. So the simple answer is no. There's a lot of work to do over the next couple of years on here. We will, even to do a drill program, we have to go out and get permits from the BLM and the Forest Service to go out and do that. That would probably take, to get the drill permits, probably 3 to 6 months, we think, maybe a little bit longer. But as we're applying for those permits, we can be doing a lot of the mapping work, the IP work, as we decide exactly where we want to drill those holes. So there's lots of work to do here. One thing I'm going to add here is I mentioned earlier that we're looking at buying some other properties, producing mines, one of them in Arizona. If we're able to buy one of those mines, it's close enough that we think we can just truck the ore from this property over to the mine, the operating mine, and utilize a lot of the infrastructure there. So, and it's fully permitted and is in production. So if we can take some of the ore from here and move it over to a producing mine, it would make it a lot quicker, Maurice, to get a permit from the Forest Service to start mining. Because you're not having to worry so much about leach pads and other things. Again, I can't guarantee that that's exactly what's going to happen, but it is one model that we've been looking at.
Is the Copper Springs project 100% owned?
So we have optioned the project. It is a 8-year option process, in which we have annual cash payments. Most of that is back-end loaded. So for the first number of years, they are not onerous. And we have to do a certain amount of exploration work on the project. So it is not onerous. It is actually a great deal for us to move forward on this.
What are the company's goals, and what strategy will the company use to accomplish its stated goals?
So I used to work for a brokerage firm on Bay Street or Wall Street for a number of years. I spent 12 years working at one of the top brokerage firms in all of Canada. When I left that firm, I spent another 3 years running the institutional sales desk for another firm. Most of my experience, I'm working on Bay Street or Wall Street, has been involved in financing mining companies. One of the companies that we did a lot of work with, and I can remember doing the IPO for it in 2004, was a company called Quadra. Quadra started out, they bought one mine in Nevada called the Robinson mine. They then took some of the cash flow that they were doing from that mine and then expanded out and started buying all sorts of other mines, not only in the U.S. And into Chile. Then they went and bought another full company called FNX Mining. Maybe many of the people that will watch this will remember Quadra or FNX. Ultimately, they sold it to a Polish company called KGHM for $2.5 billion. So I'm not saying that we can do that, but that's the type of model that we want to work on for this company. I would love to be able to buy a operating mine. Again, as I said, we are bidding on a number of assets that are currently in operations, or that mines are in operation. If we can take that cash flow and everything else from that and start to build a company out, that's really what I want to do. My chairman of the board is a gentleman named Daryl Hodges. He is a geologist. He worked all over the world for Falconbridge, including places like Norilsk in Russia, and looking for nickel, copper, all sorts of assets in many places. He understands and gets that. He and I are aligned that that's what we want to build in this company. We want to buy assets that are in production or close to production. We also want to have some exploration plays like Copper Springs, the first one that we bought here, and grow and build a company. That is exactly what we want to do.
We've discussed the good. Let's address the bad. What can go wrong, and what are your action plans to mitigate that wrong?
We all know that anybody in the mining business, that mining is very cyclical. There can be ups and downs. I believe that the copper cycle here is going to be here for quite a while. Number one, because as we start to electrify more and more of the world, you're going to see the demand for copper continue to increase. As we buy and drive more and more electric vehicles, you're going to see the copper demand increase. In a lot of places in the world, Chile, as well as others, the copper grades continue to fall off at most of the mines around the world. Us focusing on places like Arizona to mitigate some of the risk. Even Chile, that produces most of the copper in the world, is considering increasing some of its royalty rates. You've got Peru. They're going through an election cycle here right now. We don't know exactly what's going to happen. Those two, between Peru and Chile, they produce a majority of the world's copper. So we are focusing on places like Nevada and Arizona. Now, could things change in the United States? Could it get more difficult to get permits? That is always a risk. But I believe, and even if you look at the Fraser Institute, they rate the top two jurisdictions in the world to look at mining are Nevada and Arizona. And that is exactly where we want to focus, right in the heart of the Copper Triangle in Arizona. 1 hour outside Phoenix, with infrastructure, with people that know mining, understand mining, and we can work and get high-skilled people. So it's a huge opportunity for us. But again, you've got to look at cycles, and mining can be very cyclical. So that can cause big problems.
Speaking of high-skilled people, Mr. Weir, please introduce us to your board of directors and management team, and what skill sets do they bring to Copper Bullet Mines?
So I think you'll have a slide up here that shows some of the people that are involved. We have a number of other people that aren't on this list, So I'm going to kind of go through this list just a little bit, and then describe some of the other people that are working with us now. So I mentioned earlier Mr. Daryl Hodges. I mentioned earlier too that we have 3 geologists working with us. Daryl, we have another gentleman advisor to us, a gentleman named Herb Dewar. Herb is involved in some other junior publicly traded companies here in Canada. He lives in Reno. He is a prospector and a geologist and a brilliant guy. He has claims all over the United States and even Puerto Rico. He's been developing a project there as well. I've got engineers like Keith Minty, as a guy that built up North American Palladium, which now has been bought by Impala. We have Rich Warner as an advisor. He lives in Zurich. He's Canadian, but lives in Zurich, works for some very high-end companies over in the Zurich area, knows the mining industry, has worked in the mining industry all his life. So, and again, our board right now, we have Doug Harris. He's an accountant. He's also the CFO of 3 other junior mining companies. So we have the people. We also recently picked up another geologist who was the chief geologist of a mine in the Globe Miami area, right in the heart of the Copper Triangle. And we have been talking to a number of permit experts that will likely come on board with us as we move forward here too. So we have been able to put together an absolute amazing team who understand copper, who know copper, who have built mines, who have built processing plants, are PhD type guys in metallurgy and metallurgical engineering. So, we have an amazing group of people that know how to do this.
Who is Dan Weir and what makes him qualified for the task at hand?
Again, as I mentioned, I spent a number of years working on Bay Street / Wall Street. I've spent the last 10 years working for mining companies. I've been on the board of directors of zinc and copper companies. I've been around the mining industry. I know the mining industry, but I also know that I've got to bring the right people with me. So, I see myself more of as a conductor of an orchestra and bringing all the right people together. I'm not a geologist, but I know a little bit about geology, but I know that I've got to bring the right people around me, the engineers and everybody else, to put this all together. So we have a bunch of guys that are very hardworking, willing to roll up their sleeves, and have a lot of experience in the mining industry. And I consider myself one of those people as well.
Let's get into some numbers. Ladies and gentlemen, if you like the value proposition of Copper Bullet Mines and you're an accredited investor, the company is currently conducting a financing. Mr. Weir, please provide us with the details and how will the company deploy the capital for the financing.
So what we're doing right now is we're doing a seed round for $1 million. This will be used for some of the mapping that we want to do on our first project. And the permitting process. It will also give us some of the due diligence money that we need as we are bidding on some of these producing mines. We will then, the game plan will be to raise afterwards, depending on if we do buy one of these producing mines. We will do a much larger raise, $50 million plus likely is what we will raise. Now, will that mean that we'll go right to a full-on IPO? I'm not sure. We will decide that as we move forward. Or will we just do another raise just to raise, sort of $5 to $10 million to just focus on the Copper Springs area? So it's going to be interesting over the next couple months as we go through the bidding process on some of these production assets. But right now, we want to raise $1 million right now as the seed round, get in some people early on here, get them in cheap at 10 cents, and then we will likely raise money at much higher prices.
Full disclosure, I plan to participate in the financing. Before we close, Mr. Weir, for someone listening that wants to participate in the financing, please share the contact details.
Yes, I'm going to give you my cell phone number. You can call me anytime. It's Dan Weir, and my cell phone number is 416-720-0754, or you can email me anytime at danweir@bulletmines.com. That's danweir@bulletmines.com.
And ladies and gentlemen, if you wish to participate in the financing and want to have your request moved to the front of the line, please place in the subject line, proven and probable. Last question, sir. What did I forget to ask?
Well, Maurice, in some of the last projects that you and I have worked on together, you've traveled down to see some of the deposits. So I think the next thing for you to do is come on down to Arizona and let's go see the property, because I'm sure you're going to be very, very impressed with the property and the area inside the Golden Triangle, seeing some of those smelters and some of the producing mines in the area. I think you'll be very, very impressed. So you know what? Ask me to get you on an airplane and get you down there, and we'll over the next month or so we will do that.
Looking forward to it, sir. Mr. Weir, it's been a pleasure speaking with you today. Wishing you and Copper Bullet Mines the absolute best, sir.
Thank you, Maurice. It's always a pleasure.
The information presented on Proven and Probable is provided for educational and informational purposes only, without any express or implied warranty of any kind, including warranties of accuracy, completeness, or fitness for any particular purpose. The information is not intended to be and does not constitute financial, investment, or trading advice, or any other advice. You should not make any financial, investment, or trading decision based on any of the information presented without first undertaking independent due diligence and consultation with a professional broker or competent financial advisor.